My mother always warned me about dating apps, but the closer the holidays got, the more desperate I was to find someone. Thanksgiving came and went, and the whole time was spent with aunts, uncles, and grandparents asking when I would find the right man and start popping out some kids. Even with the world as it is today with the internet, it is still hard to find one true connecting. After the exhausting time spent with family I only saw a few times out of the year, I decided I was tired of waiting for Prince Charming to come riding up on his white steed. I'd have to go out and find him. I browsed the many options for online dating and settled with an app called OkCupid. I mean, who else should I trust with my love life other than that little cherub of love? So I made a profile and started swiping. It wasn't long before I matched with Richie. He was my type to a T. It was a bit uncanny how much he resembled my dream Romeo. Dark eyes, dark hair, chiseled but thin jawline, a smile always twitching in the corner of his lips. It wasn't long before we went on our first date, then our second, then our third. I had never felt this kind of connection with someone before, and I'll say I was completely smitten with him. So when he invited me back to his place after dinner, I happily said yes. It had started to snow as he drove up to his place, the first real snow of the season. It fluttered and stuck to the window. I felt warm and safe in his car, bundled in one of his jackets he let me borrow. His house was very nice for a single man. It was one story, but had an air of money to it. There was a tall black metal fence around the house, even though the nearest neighbor was maybe a mile away. He lived on the outskirts of town, just on the edge of the forest. It was a beautiful place, and I could picture myself moving in. When we pulled into the driveway, he parked and rushed around the car to open my door for me. He offered me his hand and helped me out of the car. The cold wind nipped at my nose, and I shuddered underneath his jacket. Richie wrapped his arm around me and led me up the porch steps and into his home. It was decorated, classy, and an electric fireplace lit up when the front door opened. Automatic lights went on, and I could feel a warmth wrap around me. He led me to the couch and then went to an adjoining room where I believed to be the kitchen. He came back with a bottle of red wine and 2 wine glasses. A man after my own heart. We talked and laughed as the chilly winter day turned into a bitter frozen evening. My cheeks were flushed with alcohol, and I knew if I didn't leave soon, I would make choices I was sure to regret. I wanted our first time to be special, and I wanted to be sober enough to fully remember it. It's getting late, Richie. I better be heading home. I rose to my feet, the buzz swirling around my head. He made a pouty face, then said, "But baby, it's cold outside." I laughed at his reference as I made my way to the front door. I wanted to stay, but I had to keep my composure and hold off for just another date or two, at least till past Christmas. I turned the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Puzzled, it took me a moment to realize that it was locked. I laughed at my mistake, unlocked it, and tried again. Still firm. Confusion clouded my head as I examined the door. I noticed another lock, this one on the inside, its black keyhole mocking me, silently. I turned to face Richie. He was still on the couch, and then I noticed that his glass of wine was still full. He didn't drink any of it, I thought back to the evening, and all I could think of was how he kept pouring more and more wine into my glass. Richie reached under the collar of his shirt and pulled out a small silver key on a neck chain. He clutched it, but I wasn't laughing. He chuckled, but I wasn't laughing. "Come on, Richie, I want to go home." The wine buzz was starting to fade, and I couldn't help but feel a little ball of panic forming in my chest. "What's the sense of hurting my pride?" he quoted again, and got to his feet. I now noticed that I had my back pressed against the door, as if trying to get away from him. Why was I feeling this way? Richie wouldn't hurt me, would he? He walked over to a short bookshelf and placed his hand on a record player I hadn't noticed before. He flipped it on, and suddenly the words to Baby It's Cold Outside started to fill the air. I fumbled with the doorknob to no avail. Panic was now upgraded to fear as my eyes watched him. Richie then opened a small red box that was beside the record player. He pulled something out that I couldn't see and slowly turned to face me. A scream died in my throat as my eyes landed on a worn box cutter he was now holding. It was stained with splotches of red and brown from years of use on something. Before I could think, he was sprinting across the room at me, his eyes wild and excited on impulse. On impulse, I grabbed the closest thing and threw it at him. It happened to be a metal umbrella stand that broke into several pieces as I threw it. He managed to bat a couple away, but when one rod landed in his path and he stepped right on it, it slid out from under him and caused him to fall face first onto the ground. I went to run past him, screaming along with that cheery holiday jingle. I made it a couple of feet before his hand wrapped around my ankle. I fell hard, bashing my head on the wooden floor and landing on my right wrist, wrong. I cried and begged as his hands climbed up my body, bruising my delicate skin with its force. He flipped me onto my back, and I was forced to face his wild, deranged eyes. He clenched the box cutter between his teeth, and drool fell from his mouth onto my face. I screamed, batting and pushing against him as hard as I could. He outweighed me, and he pushed his knees into my chest to stop me from struggling. The air left my lungs, and I struggled to breathe. The room around me was fading in and out, and I struggled to stay conscious. He took the knife out of his mouth and smiled down at me. Gosh, your lips look delicious, he sang in chorus with the song. Just as the blade was about to reach my face, when the world threatened to go black, a loud bang and gush of freezing wind blew over us. Richie stumbled off me, turning to face the front door that was now open. The music had been cut off abruptly, and all the lights were out. I gasped for air, crawling weakly away from him. Then I could hear it. I really can't stay. I turned to look, but there was no one in the doorway, just icy wind and gusts of snow. But I could hear it, a woman's voice. I gotta go away. Rich's eyes were wide, and he was staring at something in the doorway. No, it can't be. You're not real. He jumped to his feet and swiped at something in the air. This evening has been so very nice. The voice was light and frosty. I squinted, trying to see if I could make out any form. Richie was backing away, holding the knife out in defense as something I couldn't see approached him. The lyrics to the song followed him, the voice hauntingly beautiful. Richie threw furniture and things at dead air, but whatever it was wouldn't stop pursuing. I stumbled to my feet once I had regained my breath and rushed to the door. I looked back once and saw Richie backing up into another room, pure fear filling his eyes. You can't be here. I killed you, he screamed, before suddenly being yanked back into the room. His screams filled the now freezing air, and the only thing I could hear over him was the one last line to the song, sung slowly and coldly. Baby, it's cold outside.